Welcome to the Inspiring Tech Leaders podcast with me, Dave Roberts. This week, I'm pleased to introduce a new product review segment to the podcast. In this segment, I will present new innovative technologies helping CxOs to stay informed and updated on the latest tech industry trends and the technologies that can support their organizations. I'm delighted to welcome Roger Baskerville to the podcast, who is a director at LegacyBox and has kindly sponsored this particular episode of the Inspiring Tech Leaders. Roger has a distinguished technology career with over 25 years of experience and has previously worked for the likes of Microsoft, Citrix and Compaq. It's great to have you with us here today, Roger.
Good morning, Dave, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and, of course, your listeners.
So I recently became aware of LegacyBox and the unique service offering that you and the team have developed. Can you perhaps share with our listeners a bit more detail about this exciting new solution?
Sure. As we work with Microsoft a lot, we've always been aware of the massive legacy application issues nearly all businesses face. We developed LegacyBox to remove the issue and to enable all applications to run on Windows 10. Now, as you mentioned in your introduction, I've been working in the end-user computing space for many years, and I've always been fascinated at the lengths that some customers will go to just to deliver older 16-bit and 32-bit applications. It's actually quite common for organizations to stand up Citrix or VMware farms simply to isolate their legacy applications, then running an older operating system on it, and then remoting the applications onto a modern desktop. So whilst this is secure, it's an extremely expensive way to deliver legacy applications because it requires servers, it requires licensing, you've got to manage it and patch it. And even this approach is becoming harder as it requires older infrastructure software, which is itself out of support. It's also only an online solution. So what we wanted to do was we wanted something a lot simpler. We wanted a solution that did not require expensive infrastructure, something that ran locally on a Windows 10 PC, something that worked online and offline, something that supported USB connectivity so that legacy applications could continue to connect to plant machinery, printers, weighing machines, and all the things that customers want to connect to, including trains. And of course, it had to be secure. So what I did is I got my software developers on the case, and they came up with LegacyBox. Now, LegacyBox is a piece of software that sits on Windows 10 and contains a warehouse into which you can run Windows XP or Windows 7. And once you've got Windows XP or 7 into it, you can then install your legacy applications natively inside the LegacyBox warehouse. Now, the fact that the legacy applications are running natively means that we have a very high success rate, so much so that we've never actually failed to get a legacy application onto Windows 10. So that's a quick summary of LegacyBox.
You also mentioned there about working with Microsoft. So what has been their reaction to this fantastic bit of software that you've developed?
Well, we've got an excellent relationship with Microsoft. We basically help them achieve their goals. They want everything on Windows 10 or Azure because of the security protection those operating systems afford. Now, Microsoft certainly doesn't want to be charging their customers Windows 7 extended support charges. If a customer has one legacy application that won't run on Windows 10, it can stop a customer from moving to Windows 10 altogether. And that's for this reason that Microsoft is happy to introduce us to their accounts, as we remove that pain point and we get every user onto Windows 10. Microsoft is also a brilliant supporter of both innovation and the whole SME ecosystem, and actually introduced us to Govia Template, for example.
Well, it's really great that we can run these legacy applications on 64-bit Windows 10 now. But in a world of ongoing security threats and vulnerabilities, how secure are these applications within LegacyBox?
Well, the advantage of LegacyBox is that the applications and OS inside LegacyBox is not visible on the device. And obviously, having all the end users running the latest version of Windows 10 is far more secure than, for example, XP devices that had support ending 7 years ago.
So we've discussed how LegacyBox can help where older applications and the devices needed to run them incur additional costs, as well as posing those significant security and operational risks. Are there any other issues to do with legacy devices that organizations need to consider?
Well, one factor is that it's increasingly important is carbon footprint. I mean, we're seeing flooding events and global heating events all the way across Europe, Asia, North America. Now, reducing our energy use is one of the most important things we can do. And it's the fact that older devices are much less energy efficient, particularly if they're not equipped with solid-state disks. So if we can remove legacy items, that's excess energy that you don't need to use or pay for. Sustainability experts PX3 estimate that switching to the latest energy-efficient devices and hypercloud data centers can reduce carbon emissions by 85 to 95%. The research has also found that devices and data centers together currently produce more than 2% of the world's greenhouse gases, so there is a real problem here to be addressed. It's also the case that legacy software is dependent on particular hardware, so it's much harder to make it available to people who are working remotely. What that means is more travel to work rather than flexible working, which again causes emissions from transport, which could also be avoided. There's a real big drive towards new hybrid work models, which are popular with staff and are more sustainable. This is much easier to manage and support on the latest devices and cloud platforms. So there's an opportunity here through Legacy Box to reduce the cost, reduce the risk, improve flexibility, and be greener all at the same time.
So for organizations that want to ensure that they're Cyber Essentials Plus and ISO 27001 compliance, what does this mean for them? Does it ensure compliance?
My understanding is that all the cyber audit processes state that end-user devices must be running the latest fully patched operating system in order to get their certification. And this is obviously not the case for versions of Windows 7 and XP, both of which are out of support. Legacy Box brings every application to Windows 10 with all the security features it brings. In fact, if you run a Tenable report against Legacy Box with a legacy application inside it, it will pass as it's protected by both Windows 10 and Legacy Box.
Brilliant. That's really good to hear. So I know that the product's fairly new to the market, but what are the typical organizations that you're working with so far?
We've got customers across nearly all verticals, as legacy applications are everywhere. We're finding them in retail, oil and gas, finance, manufacturing, central regional government, healthcare, and transport infrastructure. And I'd actually quite like to tell you a little story about one of our first customers, Govia Thameslink. Microsoft actually approached us and asked us whether we could help Govia, as they had a particularly unique problem they wanted to solve. They are running several train franchises across the UK, and the trains themselves have to be maintained by legacy applications because the applications and trains are sometimes 25 years old. And every evening, the trains come into a fleet maintenance yard, and the engineers have to connect a physical PC using an RS-232 cable to each carriage. And what they do there is they're checking things like, are the brakes working? They're checking accelerometer information. They've got updating the announcements on the trains, everything to maintain the train. A bit like when you're going to take your car in for a service, the first thing they do is they connect a cable just underneath your steering wheel, and it'll tell you what's wrong with the car. Similarly with the trains, each carriage needs to be certified before it goes out, and so they will then maintain it. And the challenge here is that the software is very old, and they're a regulated organisation, and they needed to make sure that they're compliant and not using older software on the trains. And what they had to do was to try and find a way of making these older applications work on a Windows 10 device. And that's not an easy challenge because they're 16-bit applications. And what we were able to do was to look at the applications. There were actually 40 applications initially. It turned out to be 138 in the end with various different application dependencies on it. What we were able to do was to solution the 16-bit applications into Legacy Box so that those applications were working on a Windows 10 PC. So once we got them working on a Windows 10 PC, we then just had to work out how to connect to the actual train, which was an RS-232 to USB cable. And each engineer was then given a brand new Windows 10 laptop, and they were able then to just use the applications that they knew working directly onto Windows 10. There was no learning process for them to do. They just clicked on the icon as they always did do, but this time it was working on Windows 10, and it provided that security framework for GTR, which allows them to continue to use the older applications, but in a very secure way.
And what has been the financial impact for organizations that have adopted Legacy Box?
It varies from customer to customer. In the example I've just given you with Govia Thameslink, it was obviously massive because the real option was to replace the trains, which they didn't want to do. Even in places like financial organisations, insurance companies, underwriters, all those kind of people, they have to keep information for a very long time, and very often they've been quite acquisitive in terms of acquiring lots of different companies, and they end up with lots of different databases where they don't necessarily need to update the data. What they need to do is just be able to have access to it for regulatory purposes. And so the cost of ripping out all these systems is actually huge, because they'd either be told by their existing software vendors that they've got to upgrade to the latest cloud-based magic, or they need to find a way of continuing to run those databases. And they find that if they put it into Legacy Box, it's a surefire, quick and inexpensive way of making sure they can keep access to that data. We've got hospitals, for example, where they are running applications for fertility that were perfectly good applications, but they only run on Windows 7 or XP. And they really don't want the hassle of ripping all of that out and then buying a new solution and all the training when the software that they've got works perfectly well. And just by being able to securely put it onto Windows 10 for them, they're able to continue using that software without any expense.
And for those older applications where support is just no longer available, how's Legacy Box helping those types of systems?
Well, first of all, it's got to remember that the types of application we're dealing with are typically out of support even on the older operating system in the first place. That might be because the software vendor is no longer in existence. It could be that the person that developed the software is no longer at the company, or maybe not even still alive. So the applications probably don't have support anyway. And what we're doing is we're taking the applications that are now currently running in an insecure environment, i.e. on XP or Windows 7, we're moving them into a secure environment on Windows 10, so that the application is protected by Windows 10, it's also protected by Legacy Box, and it's effectively entombed inside Legacy Box. So we don't change the support situation. If there is support available for the application from the vendor, it's actually still running on Windows 7 inside Legacy Box. So it's not running actually on Windows 10, it's working inside Legacy Box on Windows 10. And if support is not available, then no different situation than we were before.
What is the typical cost for implementing the Legacy Box service?
Well, the Legacy Box subscription costs £225 per device per year, when we offer discounts for quantity and multi-year orders. Customers who've got an in-house application teams can purchase Legacy Box and install their legacy applications themselves. Alternatively, we've got a professional services team who can do it for them.
Fantastic. So do you offer any trial service for people who'd like to experience it in their own environments?
Absolutely. A 30-day trial is available. Any member of an IT team should be able to move applications to Legacy Box with ease. And as I said before, we've got a professional services team who can install it for the customer if that's required.
Brilliant. If people want to find out more information about Legacy Box, what should they do?
Customers can contact their Microsoft account director or their account technology strategist, ATS, or alternatively go to the Microsoft Marketplace and search for Legacy Box. And of course, you can visit it directly at www.legacybox.co.uk.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, Roger, and thank you very much for providing the product overview of what Legacy Box does. It sounds like an absolutely fascinating product.
It is, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed talking to you, Dave, and I look forward to doing the next one with you.
Thanks, Roger. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and stay tuned for more inspiring tech leaders.